All right, folks, we're going to do a short little recap here of episode 7, I think. Season 9 of Alone. I can't even remember what episode it is. Anyway, I just want to talk about a couple of things that I thought was very interesting that we've seen in that we saw in this last episode, and then we're going to move into kind of what some people were talking about on this episode more than what they were doing. But the first big thing that jumped out at me is Tom. The way he was cooking his squirrel. Now, this is something we haven't seen on the series before, is somebody actually, burning the hair or singeing the hair off of an animal and cooking it with the skin on. I thought that was very cool. And this is something I've never actually done before. And so this fall, when the hunting season comes in, I'm gonna hopefully get a couple of squirrels or a coon or something like that, and I'm gonna give it a try because I've seen it all over the place. I've cooked pigs that way, which they turn out absolutely fantastic, but I've never tried any other mammal aside from a pig. Anyway, very good way to cook that squirrel because it keeps all of those fats and juices on the inside. You don't lose anything through dripping, and the skin just, it kind of acts as a cooking vessel to cook that animal in. So anyway, I'm going to try it. I thought that was a cool little bit of strategy that Tom employed there. And the other big thing that I thought was super, super cool was Kerri Lee making fruit leather with all the berries that she picked. Now, I just flat out learned something right there. I've made fruit leather here at the house, but when I was in British Columbia, that just never even crossed my mind to do that. And so, that's just one of those little things that you learn from being out there and doing those things. And so I was pretty impressed with that. I wish I had thought about it when I was in BC. Probably could have just had, a little bit varied diet. But what she's doing is taking all her berries, putting in a pot, cooking them down until, she talks a little bit about this, cooking them down until they're really thick. And so she's trying to drive off as much moisture as she can. And then I assume she's going to take that paste that is a result of that and spread it over something very thin to dry. One way that she could potentially do that is to take her lid from her pot and just, spread it on there and then set that near the coals so that it's just warm and not hot. And then she'd have like perfect little discs of fruit leather, which will basically keep for, the rest of the time that she's going to be there, certainly. But I would suspect those things would keep for months. So one other thing that I noticed on this episode that's different from what other people are doing is Terry's fly rod. You'll notice that there is an eyelet on there, and you can see that he's able to strip line. And so when he's casting, you can see that he's doing what they call double hauling. So he's making a back cast, and when he's back casting, he's stripping line with his left hand, and that it makes him for a more accurate cast. It makes so you can put more power into the cast farther distances. It's just a far superior setup than just a straight, tying that line to the end of the rod. So not only does it allow him to cast farther, but it also, when he hooks a fish, he can actually strip that fish in and fight that fish in, rather than like we've seen other people doing, hooking the fish and then running away from the fish to try to land it on the bank or drag it up on the bank. Terry's able to strip that fish in and handle it right at the shore, where other people are not able to do that. So Tom on this episode makes an Ojibwe bird snare, which is kind of ironic and funny that he does that in this episode, because just yesterday, the day that this episode aired, I'd never made one of these things before, and I made one. So just a little bit of a coincidence. But this, it'll be interesting to see if he has any luck with this, because I've had mine set up over here by my bird feeder, and I've had it triggered several times, but I can't catch. I'm trying to catch a little sparrow, but I can't catch them. They keep triggering the trap. But I'm going to keep fiddling with it and trying different little variations and see if I can't get that thing to work. And the little sparrows that I'm trying to catch they may be just too small and too quick for that snare, so I may have to try to, make a modification on it. But if I can get it figured out, that'd be something that would make a pretty cool video here in the future. So in this episode, we can see Terry's getting real thin. He takes off his shirt. He looks pretty emaciated. And then, of course, towards the end of the episode, we have a med check, and they come in and make the determination that he just shouldn't continue, and so they pull him for medical reasons. So when they did Terry's exam, they had mentioned something about him, having signs of having an internal parasite, and that very well could be, because he seemed like his body condition just took a dive more quickly than I would have expected it to. And it reminded me, seeing him on this episode reminded me of Mark, I think on season 6. He was crushing it with the fish, ended up getting trichinosis, and his body condition just went, he plummeted. And so maybe Terry did have something like that going on, but if you get something like that, it doesn't matter. You can be getting all the food that you want out there, and if you have something like that internally that's just kind of wrecking you from the inside, there's just nothing you can do about it that I know of. All right, so we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk more about the philosophy. This is one of the most fascinating things for me about Alone, is people's philosophies, their motivations, and the realizations that they come to while they're out there. So dealing with the hardships that are inherent in a challenge like this, combined with the undistracted time to look inward, has a way of breaking through the mask that we all wear, that we all show the world, and showing us who we really are deep down. So in this episode, Terry mentions something about how human beings aren't meant to live in comfort. And then Jesse says that without challenge, there is no growth. In my mind, those two ideas are very closely connected, because discomfort is an integral part of challenge, because in order to be challenged, to be truly challenged, we have to operate at the very edge of our ability. We've got to get beyond that comfortable little bubble that we all love to live in, because I think that really is the only way that we get better at anything. Alone is a challenge of life, of living, the very most basic existence that a human being can live. And Tom talks about the freedom being out there, and you are absolutely free from everything that occupies our normal lives, everything that distracts us and keeps us from the type of life-altering realizations that people tend to have out there. So I want to read the last 2 paragraphs of my book. This is from the Postscript. It's been a year now since leaving the lake. I've done my best to remember what I learned there, to find the opportunities and the challenges we face, to accept what fate brings our way, to suffer well. And the most important lesson that anyone could ever learn, how important and precious our time making memories with the loved ones is. Memories, after all, are the only thing that are truly ours. I sometimes have to remind myself of those lessons. It's shocking how quickly they can fade if we let them. I don't know how many times I thought about Coy and Finn while I was out there on the lake, about how much they'd love being there, hunting and fishing, building the shack and snaring rabbits, daily. And Liz, how lucky I was to have her. All that time alone, living such a simplified life, allowed me the undistracted time to realize how truly blessed I am. I walked away from this experience with $500,000, but the most valuable things I found in the wilderness was perspective. I'd finally come to understand that time, especially with those we love, is the most valuable thing that any of us could ever have. It's amazing looking back across the seasons, and especially it's being highlighted on this season, but it's amazing how many people come to that same realization through being placed in this type of situation where you have that undistracted time. I think that's an incredibly valuable thing that so few people today get to experience. So I guess to wrap this one up, there is one cash prize, but there are things out there that are much, much more valuable. We'll see y'all on the next one.